I want to take you back in time to somewhere very, very close to here. Because when I was researching this talk for this audience, imagine my delight when I found a story which I think exemplifies the points I want to make about career development in the 21st century. And we're going to go back to Ottawa, to the 4th of September, 1945. 4th of September, 1945, when Norm Amundsen was just a metaphor in his mother's eye. The Evening Citizen reports war vets were coming home and they were being rehoused, and Canadian farmers were on strike. I don't know if that's a fairly regular thing or not, but that was happening. Some things never change. If you look at the advertisements in the Evening Citizen for the 4th of September, we see Californians selling you how to master life. In that advert, the secret method for the mastery of life out of San Jose. And I'm sure looking around the room, you'd be very pleased to know that the Ottawa Trust Company was doing a thriving business. And looking around the room, I'm sure it's probably still doing one. So there you go. Elastic hosiery correctly fitted. Correctly fitted. I can tell you from personal experience, it has to be correctly fitted. So, business as usual in Ottawa on the 4th of September. But how things were to change on the 5th of September. And our story moves to not far from here, a couple of miles away on Charlotte Street, to the Russian embassy. And our story involves a young Russian cipher clerk called Igor Gizenko. The 5th of September in Ottawa was a balmy, hot day. Remember that, a balmy, hot day like we have in Sydney, not like what we have outside, where these clothes are perfectly acceptable. It was a balmy, hot day. But Igor had received some bad career news. He'd been told that the very next day, on the 6th, he was to be replaced in his role, his highly sensitive role as a cipher clerk. The authorities were very concerned, the Russian authorities that is, that Igor had been allowed to live with his wife and young child, his wife Anna and his young child, alone, away from the other embassy staff. And he lived, again, only about 2 miles from this very venue, at 511 Somerset Street. His flat, his unit, is still there. It meant he wasn't being watched, he wasn't being supervised. And here was the man who was sending all of the secrets and sensitive information back to Russia. And he knew if he was being replaced, he would be sent back to Russia. And that meant the labor camps, or worse, he'd have to sit through a keynote from Jim Bright. Whatever, it wasn't going to be pleasant. And he took a momentous decision on that balmy evening. And he decided to gather up as many secrets and secret classified documents from the embassy he could, with a view to defecting. And he took those documents and he literally stuffed them into his shirt to get out of the building. Luckily for him, most of his colleagues were at the cinema that night in Ottawa. And he left the building anxious, nervous, confused, realizing this was a momentous step. And he decided to follow in the path of a defector who defected in America a year before. And instead of going to the mounted police, he decided to go to the newspapers. He wasn't sure that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police hadn't been infiltrated by some of his colleagues. And the fear was if he'd gone there, he could have been found out and taken back. So he went, late at night, to the Ottawa Journal. And this is where, in a sense, the first part of the chaos comes into this. The first unplanned event in this whole process comes in. As he turns up at the evening editor's office of the Ottawa Journal and knocks on the door, and you have to imagine now I'm Igor, and you've got to imagine my shirt is stuffed packed full of paper. What do you mean that's easy to imagine? Minyanushka Fumash. Ninya mushka pomash. About 9:10. Desperate. Ah, 2 doors down on the left, it says gents. Igor didn't speak English. And in a regretful oversight in the recruitment policies of the Ottawa Journal, they'd failed to appoint an editor who was fluent in Russian. They didn't know what he was saying. They didn't understand it. They did realize he was distressed and eventually suggested that he goes to the mounted police, the place he didn't want to go to. By this stage, the man is worried that the authorities will have found out he's gone and have taken the papers. He fears for his life and the life of his wife and child. He goes instead to the Justice Ministry. What was he thinking of? This man would know 9 o'clock at night, the government department is not going to be open. You can imagine him turning up at this department, picking up the phone, dial 1 if you want a passport, dial 2 if you want to defect and share lots of secrets. Dial 2. I'm sorry, office hours are between 9:30 and 4:30, come back in the morning. Effectively, that's what happened. He was told to go away. What could he do? So he goes back to his home, and there it is, 511 Somerset Street, Ottawa. And I have to acknowledge the fantastic photography of a local Ottawan photographer called Mikey G, who's given me permission to use these photographs. He's documented this story. So he goes back there, and he's there with his wife and his child, fearing for his life overnight. What is he going to do? How is he going to deal with this situation? Will people come for him? The next day, he goes back to the Justice Ministry. This time he gets in, and he's told, no, the minister can't see you. Come back tomorrow. By this point, the man is a gibbering wreck. What's he going to do? Well, he goes back to the apartment, and he tells his wife, Anna, who by now is frantic. They're desperately trying to think what to do. And as they're thinking this, came the on the door of flat 4, the Guzenko flat. It was a chauffeur from the Russian embassy come to collect him. They cowered behind the door. They didn't make a noise. Somehow, they kept their toddler quiet through this process. After repeatedly hammering on the door, the chauffeur gave up and went. Now we're at almost panic stations. Igor knows that will not be the end of it. What can he do? Who can he turn to? How is he going to get through this next 24 hours? There's his flat number 4 where they knocked on the door. In his desperation, he goes to his neighbor at number 6 across the hallway. And his neighbor takes them in. They'd barely been there an hour when the men from the Russian embassy came back. And this time, there were 6 of them, and this time they were armed. And he saw them from the street enter the building, go up the stairs, smash down the door to number 4, go in and ransack it. He looked through the keyhole and could see these people chasing after his secrets and after his life, literally several feet away. Luckily for him, he'd made so much of a fuss at the Justice Ministry that the mounted police had been told to launch a surveillance operation. And they were over the road in the park, watching the building, when the embassy staff turned up and ransacked. They intervened, and they sent the embassy staff on their way. And that gave Igor some protection. The following morning, he gets into the ministry. And to cut a long story short, he ends up revealing secrets of a massive spy ring operating by the Russians across Canada, across America, reaching to the State Department, and into the highest reaches of MI6 in London, which ultimately led to the exposure of people like Kim Philby, Burgess and McLean, the Cambridge spies. That one decision, that one career decision made by that man in Ottawa on the 5th of September, 1945, has been attributed with beginning the Cold War. Shift really does happen, and it happens right here in Canada. And one career decision can literally change the course of history. Change happens, and sometimes that change is profound. It made me think about me being a spy, with my initials being JB. Maybe that I should go into that business. Maybe I should become a spy. Maybe it would be like this. And maybe not. And maybe not.